Okay, so they want us, I'll bring it down here for us. They want us to solve x squared minus 10x plus 25 is 16. How are we going to do it? Well, so again, solving x squared or x cubed with an equal sign, what do? Step number 1, get a 0. Get a 0. So that's the first thing you need to do on this one. Oh, you know what? They said something about square. Just forget about this. I'm not going to do it their way. You could, but it won't work better. I'll just do it this way. This will be better in the long run. So step 1, get a 0. So subtract 16 from both sides. So we didn't have to do that on the other problems. This is kind of a new situation, right? Subtract 16. Why am I doing that? Because I want 0. Get a 0. This one didn't already have 0. I have to get 0. You should calculate 25 minus 16. What's that? 9. Okay. Then step 2. What do we always do in step 2? Take out numbers or letters in common. And in this case, there are none, right? There's nothing on this one. X, they don't all have an X, do they? That 9 doesn't have an X. So I can't be putting an X in the front. That's not going to work. They don't all have an X. Everybody see what I'm saying there? They don't all have an X in common. We're only taking out what they have in common. They don't all have an X in common, do they? How about numbers? No, there's no number. This only has a 1 here. There's no number there, which means it understood 1. There's no number they're all divisible by. So there's nothing in common. Okay, so that's over. Step 3. What do you do then? So for the x squared minus 10x plus 9, how do you factor x squared? So you factor x squared minus 10x plus 9 by the 2 parentheses with the x's in the front. And you put whatever multiplies to be this number, add the 2 numbers that multiply to be positive 9, add to be minus 10. Remember that? That's the same thing we've been doing. So let's do it again. So 2 parentheses, x is in the front. What 2 numbers multiply to be 9, positive 9, and add or subtract, whatever, to be negative 10? Well, what numbers multiply to be 9? I'll bring it over here. What numbers multiply to be 9? Well, you can go 1 times 9 or 3 times 3. How can those add to be negative 10? Oh, we need negative 1 and negative 9 because they'll multiply to be positive 9 and add to be negative 10. That's the pair. Negative 1 and negative 9. They'll add to be negative 10, but 2 negatives multiply to be positive, don't they? So it's negative 1, negative 9. Everybody seeing that? Because they will add to be negative 10, and they will multiply to be positive 9. Okay, so then what do you do in step 4? Set each part with a letter, every part that has a letter, equal to 0, and solve. So I'm going to take just the x minus 1 equal to 0, and then just this x minus 9. So you set each part equal to 0 separately. Remember the logic there, right? If 2 things are multiplying to equal 0, what does that mean logically? That means, the first one could be 0, the second, right? If I told you, hey, I'm thinking of 2 numbers and they multiply to equal 0, what does that mean? How do you multiply 2 things and get 0? The first one could be 0, because 0 times anything would be 0. Or the second one could be 0, because anything times 0 would be 0, right? Either one can be 0. That's why we take the first one equal to 0 and the second one equal to 0. That's why we're so into this 0 thing. That's why we do that in the first step, because that's the hinge of our logic. All right, let's finish it up. And then you just add 1 to both sides to get x alone. And add 9 to both sides to get x alone. So positive 1 and positive 9. Those are our two answers. Now, notice what they say over here. Here they're being more specific. They want x1 lower, right, less than x2. So they want x1, they want the lower one first. You got to put the 1 here and the 9 there. Does that make sense? 1 there and 9 there. You can't reverse them on this one because they're wanting the x1 lower than the x2. Now watch out. Here's a common mistake I've seen over the years. What if you happen to get two negative answers? What if I got, I don't know, let's say -3 and -4? Which one of those is, x1, they want x1 to be the lower and they want x2 to be the higher. Which one of those is lower? Well, you have to be careful. This is -3. This is, and here's, positive numbers are over here. So -3 is actually the higher number and -4 is actually lower. So the lower would be the -4 and the higher would be the -3 in that case. Those aren't my answers, but I'm just saying if you happen to get a couple of negative answers, be careful. Lower means further left on the number line, doesn't it? So the -4 would be the lower and the -3 would be the higher in that case. In our case, we just got positive numbers, so it's really easy to say which one's lower and higher. So there we go.